And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. RFQ Refugees podcast. Ted here, John here, talking DC United, Washington Spirit, U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team. We are your DC soccer central home. It's the off season. Things are a little sad. John, I know you had a great week last week. I think you know why.
I did have a great week.
Yes.
I'm finally now normalizing on my sleep, which is great. I think I'm back to at least 5.5 hours of sleep. So I'm a happy camper for many reasons.
That's good. I'm glad. I'm happy. Let me just say, I am happy. I'm happy for you, John. I am happy that your sports team that plays a game that is extremely long, and I don't really understand it. I am happy that they did a good thing, and they brought some joy to the DC sports section, because there's not a lot of joy normally with DC sports. But we are now, I guess, the District of Champions after the WNBA wins, the Washington Capitals winning the Stanley Cup in 2018, and now the Nationals. So, things are great in DC sports. Things are pretty great. But I'm glad you had that moment. A team that's not really doing great and that we really have no clue what the heck's going on is the team that this aforementioned podcast is about. By the way, going to go ahead and do it. We're just going to open the phone lines today. We're going to talk, but please call in 202-905-0454. Give us your thoughts. Talk about, we are literally, this is off-season time. Talk literally about whatever you want. Whatever you want. It can be anything. We will answer it. I think we're pretty much open to that. Within reason. I don't want to invite certain people to call in and do things. So
we don't want anyone to sign us up for any mailing list for cars in Hawaii, for instance.
Yeah, that would not be a good thing to do. So, but pretty much anything. That's what we have our producer in the background. He's going to be Brian's here, and he's going to help us sort of weed some things out. So, let's talk, John. It's been I guess a little bit longer than a week. I guess has it been longer than a week? I think it's
been longer. It feels longer.
Yeah, it feels longer. It feels a lot. We have the whole playoffs, even though it's been flying right by. We've had a whole couple weeks since DC United's 4-1 loss. I have my thoughts and my feelings, and some of them have been very, very much influenced by certain players who performed very, very well in the playoffs. We'll get to that in a minute. John, how are you feeling 2 weeks out of the 4-1 loss to TFC?
Well, I'm glad that they appear to be very good.
Yeah,
and they appear to not want to let anyone stop them. So that's good. You always want to be knocked out of the playoffs by the team that goes all the way if you're going to get knocked out. And so that appears to be happening, or has happened. I don't know, man. I think no one really expected a lot out of the playoff run once we got in, because we backed in so sideways. With a whole bunch of shutouts in a row, which was fine, but also not a lot of scoring and not a lot of excitement. And everyone sort of just thought, well, you never know. You get in the playoffs, anything can happen, I guess. And then we got in, and then something did happen. We got the doors blown off in extra time after a very nice goal in the very last seconds of the game. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like I would maybe feel differently if I didn't just have a World Series win to mess with my endorphin levels in a very serious way.
You're all rainbows and sunshine right now, John. I get it. So I guess I can be the more leveled. I guess it stung for this stung for a long time. I was not in a good mood. But I always get that, hey, you get that bump to look forward to next season. I guess. There's been sort of some, I don't want to call it interesting sort of stories. Obviously, the big news coming out was not really surprising news, was that Luciano Acosta is pretty much out the door. He is not. He is either going somewhere else, maybe to another team in MLS. My guess is somewhere in Europe. He's going to be picked up on a contract. I absolutely love this player into 2016. I was very happy for him in the summer of 2017 when it seemed like we were getting players that could play around him. He absolutely blew apart the second half of 2018. I got his jersey on the back. I've made no qualms about it. I completely fell out of love with Luciano Acosta in 2019. John feels differently. I know John feels differently.
Everyone knows I feel differently.
Yes, everybody knows you feel differently. But it was very it was kind of sad because he sort of represents the sort of that last big time player from the old era, from the RFK era. And it's kind of it's kind of sad for me to see the way this all kind of fell apart. Because you didn't want it to fall apart like that. We all wanted to be talking about this team riding high, Acosta and Rooney, Acosta and Rooney making best 11 again, putting together a full season of good play. Neither of them made the best 11. Neither Rooney nor Acosta made the best 11. So it's kind of sad to see him go out the way he did. I thought it was very interesting. It didn't seem like in the interview he necessarily burned any bridges. He didn't necessarily say Olsen was an awful coach. I don't know why they're keeping him. He did have some messages for the club. He said it didn't seem like in the early days the club was really dedicated to building a winner. Then they got in Rooney. At the end of the day, he said a thank you to the fans. So they say time heals all wounds. I've forgiven him. I guess I've forgiven him a little bit for sort of his actions in 2019. And I feel a little sad to see him go. I don't know what the future holds. We might get somebody in here who's just not as good or not as skillful. We play ugly games and suddenly it's not as exciting. He certainly brought a breath of excitement. So I'm sad. John, I'll let you give your final eulogy to Luciano Acosta in a DC uniform.
Yeah, I'm very sad.
Yeah.
If you happen to read this article, I think he did a good job of explaining and sort of I would say he didn't make excuses for his play. I think he would say, yes, the PSG move affected me. Yes. I thought about it. I had my first game back, I was able to put it away, but after that, it definitely did. And people who say that it did, they're right. I think he did throw a little shade at Ben, so much that Olsen was asked to comment on what he said, and he basically was like, I reject that assumption. And he said, if you interview the rest of the players, I don't think they lost belief. And the thoughts were that it was a good season that ended in a bad way. But it was a good season. And that's sort of what he said in front of the supporters group in the last game of the regular season, and got him yelled at like that. That is his belief. His belief was he was able to find a way to get this team points at the end of the season without playing attractive in any way soccer, because all of the pieces just weren't working. So his answer would be, a good coach finds a way to get points no matter what. And then the fan would say, you have these players, why can't you make it work? That's on you to make it work.
Yeah.
But back on Acosta, I think that if you look at his stats, I think you've pointed this out a couple times, where 2018 was an aberration, and 2019 was more like a regular season. And it's funny how much 2018 made me think it erased the bad parts. It made it so that all the time, and when he was playing on garbage teams at RFK, scoring 3 goals a year because no one around him was any good at all, and he would get red cards all the time because he would get mad because no one around him was any good at all. I kind of got smoothed over, and all I remembered was the dribbling, the passing, the just being exciting, just visually being the visually distinctive player on a team of completely nondescript nobodies for a lot of years, or it feels like a lot of years. Well, actually, it wasn't that long when you look back at it.
Yeah, it was. It feels like forever. It feels like forever.
Yeah, it was only 2016.
Yeah.
But it feels way longer than that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sad. He will not be replaced in any way that makes it feel the same for me. I think it will take a while. This team has not done very well at least since I've been watching since 2008. They've not done a good job of finding the playmaker that can unlock games, usually because they're expensive, but then other times they tried to do it and just didn't work out. So he was one of the ones for me that they did mostly what they wanted him to do. And it's sad that he's gone, and I think we'll be worse for it. And I think that his points about Olsen were probably pretty fair. And I think if you were able to, and I think as we continue to release players here, which we've done, and we'll talk more about that too. I think if you were able to interview them, I think they might have similar thoughts. We'll just never know if Leo Hara thinks that Ben Olsen was a bad motivator and didn't have tactics that worked. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think that's the comment I guess that Ben makes, that talk to all the players, let them know. Ben's also not really mincing words about whether the team. It's kind of interesting because we saw the Pablo Maurer article. I think Pablo Maurer either tweeted or there was an article basically saying Olsen's back next year. Don't expect any coaching change. Don't expect any change. He's going to be back. I don't think. I think we all kind of looked at it and said, probably. You're probably right. I'm still about 75%. But Goff's article, again, I don't know if it claimed any sort of like definite articles, but it was Ben sort of saying, yeah, they might look for a new coach. They might go and look for somebody else. And so the Goff article almost seemed to paint it in a light where it was like, well, hold your, don't think Ben Olsen's for sure coming back. They're going to review it. They're going to, look back and, who knows, maybe Ben Olsen, maybe the Ben Olsen comment from Pablo is a comment from, 3 months ago when things were flying high. The team was, hadn't given up a goal in 5 games, had sort of played themselves back into the playoffs. Maybe that was a sort of a moment, and things can change really quickly. If a coach comes in, and they think he can do a better job than Ben, then they owe it to themselves to go out and get that coach and sign him. If they don't think that, then okay, I guess Ben Olsen's here for at least this year. So I still put it at probably about 75%. I think 75% chance Ben Olsen is back. There's like a 25% where I won't be surprised if he's gone either. We've talked at length about whether he should stay or whether he should go. I do think this year Ben Olsen did not help himself. In any shape of the word. You look at the Acosta leaving, how he wasn't able to make that work. The tactical changes, everything just didn't really work this year. And then let's get to talent evaluation, which we've both kind of sung the praises of the talent evaluation at DC. Their ability to find decent players and they cut loose guys maybe, and people that might come back to bite them, but it almost never does. Well, there was one that I think has severely come back to bite them, and that is Nick DeLeon. If you all had a chance to watch the Eastern Conference Final, Nick DeLeon had an absolute stunner of a shot. Better than the one he had, just in 2018 season.
Kind of out of nowhere too.
Yeah, sorry.
And kind of he had dribbled himself into a dead end and just sort of backed up like a Mack truck with the beeper on, and then just shot kind of flat-footed into the top corner. It was kind of ridiculous. And
just fired it, and that was a player that DC United and Golf even. I found it funny. Golf even had the thing where it was like they said that they didn't think with his injuries he'd ever get back to sort of that elite level. And Toronto has made us look like fools. Toronto has made us absolutely look like fools, and just the notion that this team, and I tweeted this out, and I think I got a lot of response from it. But I think it bears repeating. The fact that this team decided to keep Zoltan Stieber with $1 million salary, and yet they couldn't figure out a way to make Nick DeLeon with I think his option was somewhere in like the 300 to 400,000 range. I'd have to go back and look. But you look at who's standing, who rocked you 4-1, who's now standing in the final game, going on the road against the best team in the East in New York City FC, and absolutely just outplaying them. Then you look at them going to Atlanta and getting a win there, and you just look at that. And just the contributions they got from Nick DeLeon, the contributions they got when they're missing their best player in Josie Altidore up top at striker. They're basically playing Pozuelo as kind of like a false 9. And that really makes me question whether, not only just question Ben Olsen, makes me question Dave Casper, whether he's really the right person for the job. DC has a lot of answers to give, and they've got a lot of roster spot. They've got a lot of ability and ability to sort of maneuver. Who knows what the CBA negotiation is going to look like? Things have been kind of quiet on that. I've been sort of surprised. I kind of expected a lot more of that to start ramping up. But I'm guessing once the trophy's raised, probably going to be like the first thing that comes out. But I guess from that perspective, I really question, based on what I saw from Nick DeLeon and how I really question Ben Olsen and even Dave Casper's talent evaluation. That hurt. That stung really badly. And while I'm happy for Nick, I don't know if that'll ever go away. I really don't.
I hope he wins.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
Um,
I hope he wins.
we got some questions in the chat.
Go. Let's fire
Arthur
away.
Lampros says, could Lucho or any other DC United player make his way across the pond to play with Rooney? Is Rooney going to make any recommendations to his buddies in the Championship or League One? I don't think so. Maybe a player like Areola potentially.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of players that he really had a lot to say. He talked a lot about the American player and how they were underpaid in MLS. He's not going to say anything about Lucho. I think the Magic's dead there. So he wouldn't recommend him. Who you look like you may think that there's somebody that he might recommend.
I mean, could you recommend Lucho? Possibly. I do think it definitely seems like he talked a lot in 2018 of how great Lucho was, and then it seems very clear to me that kind of waned a little bit, and he wasn't really doing much of the talking. So I don't know. It'll be I don't know. I think we see him end up either. I think he'll wait out the January transfer window, see if there are any bites, anyone interested in taking him. He'll end up, I think, at either an Italian side, a second division, lower division Italian side, maybe in the Championship, maybe a little bit higher. I don't know if he makes like a top division team at this point, or he takes the money and goes to Saudi Arabia. Truth be told, that also could happen. But I don't know. I don't know if necessarily Darby's going to be chomping at the bit to sign Lucho Acosta.
I would be slightly surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got another question on here, sort of talking about the field conditions, thinking about what it's going to be like after I guess they start in February for XFL, and I think will be 2 months, I guess, before DC United open up at home. They will, however, the challenge really is going to be that there's a sort of overlap.
Well, there's gonna be some overlap, and actually there are. So someone, I forget where I exactly heard this, but a large reason why, part of the reason, I'm not sure it was the only reason, but part of the reason why the MLS is trying to end their season so early, where before it's trailed into December before the season was over, and it's ending November 10th. It's probably the earliest it's ended in probably at least 4 or 5 years. And the reason is because they want to give enough lead time, because apparently I think there's part of the CBA negotiation is the offseason has to be a certain set number of days long. So when they finish in December, they have to push it all the way into March based on the CBA negotiation. But now what they're trying to do is trying to end the season early, and I think they're actually talking about starting it like late February is when the season's actually going to begin.
Oh.
Yeah. So
there'll be a lot of Well, basically, I just wanted to get to the fact that the contract stipulates at the end of the XFL season they will replace the grass and pay to replace the grass. So DC will have basically a full year, maybe 1 month short of a full season of new turf. So that's good. There is some crossover, so there will be some games one can only imagine where the field's going to look and play kind of bad. It's the one time we kind of wish this was turf. Maybe it's not. So you guys saw how it looked after they played lacrosse in the rain, and how that basically just nuked the field. So
yeah,
fingers crossed on that one. It's not a huge story, not a big deal, but
something
about
to
Audi Field. Go ahead.
Yeah, something to look at, definitely. I know where you're going, but you can go ahead. I know.
Yeah, sure. So in addition to changes at Audi Field next year, as opposed to also having another client or another tenant share the building, there's going to be safe standing according to reports, verified reports. So that's good. That's something we've been talking about as a maybe might happen. Something that a lot of people thought already would have happened by the time the stadium was built. But sometimes things don't happen the way you think they will. So next season, you will no longer be at a large risk to do a front quadruple flip forward into the people in front of you when you're in the supporters group section. So that's good. There's rumors about more stuff coming to the field, but some people have speculated. Does that mean roof? Does that mean something with like potentially building a roof over the supporters group stands? No, that will never ever happen ever. It is more likely that the team will blow Audi Field up and then build another stadium in its place in a different design format. Those roofs are not ever going to happen. Maybe giant tarps. That's what they could do. I think structurally it's not a possibility. But I think it's great that they're doing the thing I said they would do at the start, and I think they should also maybe put the final tiles over the roofs that they do have, but maybe that's asking too much.
Yeah, the safe standing obviously is important, and it seems to me like that's just kind of an easy thing for them to do, and they should be able to afford the ability to bring people in and to finish to make that supporter section better than what it is, which is just bleacher seating. I'm glad they were able to finally convince the city of that. I hope it comes next season. I guess my concern is we haven't really um, we haven't really gotten a we haven't really gotten like I guess a timetable. Have they said specifically it's going to be there by like first kick or first game? I thought the article seemed still kind of like, yeah, we're gonna do it, but we'll whenever we get around to it. I guess that's the only concern. There wasn't really a timetable established.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be before the season starts. I think that's a as far as a structural thing. This is really just unbolting and screwing in some new low bars. Arthur also says that the seats below the Heineken Club would come out for standing. So
Interesting.
that's interesting because those are not cheap seats down there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so that's all good news for Audi Fields. I think there's still some things they need to figure out, and they need to, I finished. They need to figure out a way to finish that roof and make it sort of more representative and look better than it does right now. I don't want to walk into Audi Field and say it looks the same time. And obviously, of course, the history representation needs to happen. There needs to be some sort of representation of the team's history. I hope that comes. I hope that happens. You got to figure out a way to have the championships, trophies somewhere displayed, represent the history of your club, and they do seem to be trending a little bit more back towards that. It seems like they kind of took this year as kind of let's just get through this season and then let's actually do some things that we want to do with the stadium. So,
Gregory points out that the XFL may fold before the end of the season, which it probably will, based on recent efforts to create parallel football leagues, and also looking at how much they're paying some of their players. I think they're looking at paying for full seasons like $22,000 for non-quarterbacks, which I forget who the guy was, but one of the players that got drafted was like, "Yeah, you can not. That's not happening. You can take that money and shove it." Because if you're thinking about like the risk that you're putting yourself at and your body at for 22,000, that's not going to
it's
cut the mustard for a lot of these players.
we're very much living in sort of a different time as far as like football and what players are willing to put themselves through. Just in the amount of information that's out there, I could see a player being like 22,000. I can't. No, I'm gonna go keep my body and my head safe, and I'm gonna go take this college degree I have, and I'm gonna go get something else that's gonna pay me. That's gonna pay me a lot better. I will say as far as the XFL folding, it is backed by Vince McMahon, who does have a considerable amount of money.
It was last time though too, wasn't it?
It was, but they still got through the season. Let's be clear. Like they did better than the I forget what the other league was. I've even forgotten the name of
I forget too.
yeah, the one that was
Remember.
started in the spring and like didn't finish the season. That's the difference because it's this is all backed by Vince McMahon. So I fully expect that Vince McMahon has the ability and the funds. Was the UFL? I thought it was like something like Alliance of American Football or something.
AFL? Who knows?
Yeah, it's some weird name. It's dead anyway, so it's not coming back. So that was our producer in the chat saying it was UFL, but I believe it had some like weird. It was like the AAF or something like the Alliance of American Football. I think it was. It was some weird name. But anyway, I guess we're all DC Defenders fans, right? No, nobody.
Of course, big time.
Of course.
Get another YouTube question here.
Go ahead.
Rickling says, without Rooney and similarly significant offseason signing, plus keeping Olsen and Casper, what kind of hit do you think attendance will take next season? I think the answer is it won't. Based on people's conversation, I think the parable that often gets talked about, at least on my part of Twitter, is that Twitter is not real life, and that what we hear on the internet is not a real great sample for what the real deal is elsewhere. So I think people on the internet are real mad. I think people who listen to this podcast, that type of people, people who are putting on podcasts, that same sort of segment, they would say that it probably should mean that less people should come to these games because it shows a lack of wanting to win and, all the things we've talked about ad nauseum. But I will tell you, I doubt that it really will. I think that they will figure out a way to put butts in seats no matter what. Season tickets are probably flat because they kept the price where they were last year. Allowed people to actually lock in that pricing for 3 years. There's something to be said for that. People will ride out what might look like a bad season. I think we're so early in this off season. We're not even. I mean, we're technically in the off season. They're not playing anymore, but the season's still going on, so there's no real player movement going on. But who knows? I think that it's entirely possible that we get a player that is exciting. I think you should probably count on that. There will be some player signed from Europe or South America that you will have heard of probably, um, and you will be excited by them. And some people will say that's good enough for me to get a ticket. And then the rest of the people that are just saying I love soccer, I like seeing it in person. This is still the most affordable ticket in town for a season ticket, so I'll be there. So long way of saying I don't think it'll affect it much. It won't be more. There will not be more than there were last year. Attendance will be probably slightly down, or at least or flat at most, optimistic. But it really doesn't affect things. I think the way people really want them to sometimes.
I will say that what I think is what's going to contribute, I guess, to what the season ticket, to what it's going to look like stands. I think it's going to be very similar to how it kind of was at RFK. First few games of the year, people show up, hey, soccer's back, let's go watch the game. People show up. The team's good. Attendance kind of stays there. It stays around, 14, 15,000, people show up. People show up and watch the team. Team goes bad, you get 12, 11,000. I think this is going to depend on the results on the field, how the team looks, how the team plays, how things go is going to determine whether or not we see this team, actually do well. And in the attendance wise, this year it's not. You don't have the flashy Rooney unless they sign Mesut Ozil, which I guess could still happen, but probably not.
I think he was only going to happen if he was literally being chased by like gang members in London every single day, and they were going to be able to take him on a free.
Yeah,
he's still one of the most highly paid soccer players in the entire universe. So strong bet that's not going to happen.
no, I would sort of bet against that. But I think it's going to just going to depend on the results. If this team is playing well, if they're playing, semi-attractive soccer where they're actually winning, I think people are going to want to show up and people are going to want to buy a ticket. That's always happened with DC, is when the team's playing well, people want to show up and people want to watch, want to be entertained. Things aren't going well, then things are going to taper off. And yeah, we're going to talk about, 11, 10,000 people in the stands watching a team that's, 8 and 20 or something like that. It's going to be like the bad old days of RFK. So it's,
that's my sweet spot. So I'll be well used to that if that's where we end up.
Yeah.
All I know is bad.
All you do know is bad. You got in right at like the end of the good times in 2008.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so I mean, I still see people coming out. I think they're going to. What I'll be curious to see what they do. We sort of see them. They signed Rooney, no brainer deal. They got the deal done. They brought in Rooney. Are we going to see this team still go with sort of the loan to buy options with the amount of cap space that they have? Are they going to actually go out and make a choice and say, yep, we are going to pay a transfer fee of, $5-6 million, bring this guy in. We believe he can be good. Because that's what you're seeing a lot of the league going to. And DC's kind of gone with this loan to buy model, which, is a very smart and prudent business move. I mean, it allows you, if we had bought Leonardo Hara and we had his contract on our books, we'd be running around trying to figure out how are we going to get rid of this guy because we don't want him anymore and we got to get rid of him. Now it's loan. It's like, oh, thanks Hara. Thanks. Bye. See you later. So, I mean, at least it prevents the team from being stuck in a bad contract. But you don't get the quality of player because you're not willing to go out and spend that money to bring in a guy who can actually be really successful. You're not bringing in a Pity Martinez. You're not bringing in a Miguel Almiron. You're not bringing in a Nicolas Ladero. Sorry, not Nicolas Ladero. He was, I forget where he go. Not Ladero, but really Diaz from Toronto, or a lot of those other guys who come in and sort of our big difference makers. And that's the question really DC has to answer. What type of team are they? What are they going to be this off? And I think we'll find out this offseason. What type of team are we? Are we still the prudent, say we're going to spend big and not spend big? Most people seem to think so on the internet.
I'm on the internet. I think so.
Yeah. Or is this team actually going to go out and make some moves? And I'm not saying they go out and sign Mesut Ozil or nothing. I'm just saying, what are they going to do? Are they going to actually pay transfer fees for players, bring guys in, pay significant transfer fees, not just, 2-3 million, pay, 4 or 5 million even. I would be fine with that. They pay 5 million for a player, I might be interested.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. I don't think that they will. That will be a departure, I think, for them a little bit. But
big question.
Never know. I mean, Jason Levian's talking a lot of mess in the Washington Post. He's done that before. Mm-hmm. At the end of the 2013 season, he did the exact same interview. Basically, Will Chang theoretically was also not Will Chang. I'm sorry, Eric Tohier was also in the conversation, but it was really just him again. And they were talking about all the changes that had to be made. And to be fair, I think they cut half the team, so there were obviously changes that were made. But we'll all see. I think the people who pay the closest attention have the highest expectations. And we see teams that are spending. If you look at the Final Four, these are all teams that are spending a lot of money. And we would like to be in the Final Four. There have been analysis. People on Twitter have told us that they run the numbers and looked at teams in the playoffs versus spending, and how there hasn't been a direct correlation. This season there has been. At least if you look at the Final Four now, there was a pretty good straight line to pay for quality difference maker players, and they'll make differences for you, or pay for Nick DeLeon for $300,000 and he'll win a game for you.
Yeah. And the big thing to mention is everybody's like, oh, there's no correlation. I'm like, well, yes, of course. And over the years, there hasn't really been, while MLS teams were trying to figure out how to make the DP rule work, because you had a lot of teams spending a lot of money on players that weren't that good. And then once they finally got better at scouting and bringing in talent, things started to shift. And things are very much shifting. Toronto FC, this is their third time they're in the MLS Cup out of 4 years. Atlanta United was, on the cusp of getting to their second straight final, which they would have hosted. Yes, the playoffs are a crapshoot. I found it kind of funny, like when the playoffs first began, it was like all the home teams were winning, with the exception of, I think, the Galaxy in Minnesota. And then it was like all the road teams, all the teams on the road are now going to win. So the playoffs are a crapshoot, but spending money puts you in positions where if you can consistently do that, pay the money to bring in good players. And also, you mentioned the teams that are losing the most money. They're also the teams that also have a huge negative valuation on the Forbes list. If you look at their net operating income, because they're willing to spend that money to get better. This league is going to become a league of haves and have-nots. That's just the nature. You have owners like Arthur Blank that are willing to drop the money. Right now, Levian can talk all he wants about how he wants to spend money. So far, I would say, has he done it? I guess Rooney's something.
He also doesn't have it.
What?
He also doesn't have it.
Yeah. It's going to be the people he brought in. It's going to be.
He wants to spend their money, so it's a question of if they want to let him spend their money.
Speaking of people who wanted to sort of throw money at this team, do we want to talk about Kevin Durant?
Yeah,
potentially buying an ownership share. Now, I have some thoughts on this. I do have some opinions. I guess so. If you haven't heard the story, Pablo Maurer is sort of dropping another story. Like, we basically use Pablo Maurer and Stephen Goff. Right now, Pablo Maurer has been winning it as far as like the sort of offshoot stories that he just sort of drops on us. Basically saying that Kevin Durant has been in talks multiple times to buy DC United. Of course, if you're, what's that?
A stake in DC United.
A stake in DC United. Sorry. So you're buying a stake in sort of the team. I think he was in talks early. I think a couple of years ago when they were still looking for new owners. I guess before they found Jason Levian, or maybe it was when Tohier was selling a share. I can't remember the exact date, but I know they tried once. Then he tried again when Jason Levian was looking for new partners. Basically, the deal fell apart because Kevin Durant wanted kind of a sweet deal. He wanted kind of a sweetheart deal for the team, and the team was like, "Nah, sorry, we're not really interested." I think he wanted his name to be part of the deal. Like here, I'm Kevin Durant. I'm buying your team. Therefore, I should get a better deal because my name's Kevin Durant, and I'm going to bring you attention and media attention.
Like James Harden with the Dynamo.
Yeah, like James Harden with the Dynamo. My question would be, go around the street and ask what MLS team James Harden owns, and I guarantee you most people will be like, I have no idea. I didn't even know he owned an MLS team. So I understand the sentiment. Like, why wouldn't DC want this to happen? You still have to be smart businessly, and you can't just let some guy get because then it sets you up with, you're possibly, maybe pissing off another owner who's like, oh, I'm not going to buy for you. I want the deal Kevin Durant did. So you do have to be kind of careful. And, I know it would be kind of a big deal if Kevin Durant dives in. It would be a story. Certainly, it would probably make ESPN. It would probably, make the front page of Washington Post if, when he's announced as an owner. But the same thing with James Harden, the Dynamo. I don't know if the Dynamo, and hey, if a Dynamo fan wants to call me and say, no, James Harden did all these great things for when he signed on with the team, by all means, call in. But from what I can gather, not really much of a bump. So I don't really get upset and say, oh, the team should have done that. They should, whatever Kevin Durant was willing to pay, they should have let him do it. Like, no, that's not how real life works. I'm sorry. I would love Durant to be an owner. I think it'd be kind of cool. It'd be a cool thing, but I just don't think it was if it's not the right move financially, the team shouldn't do it. They should do it if they feel it's the right move financially and they're going to get a little bit of a bump from it. So
I want people who have more money than sense
yes.
and who live very close by and have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I do not want people so he's got a lot of money, right? But
so Dan Snyder.
He does have more money than sense. So I guess it does technically hit my.
I say be careful. Be careful what you wish for, my friend. Be careful what you wish for.
I guess I'm looking more at Ted.
Yeah.
I think would probably be my dream candidate. But also, yeah, I mean, it was a funny thing. I don't think it would have materially affected our conditions in any way whatsoever. But it was a funny thing that almost happened twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the Washington Spirit?
Yeah, let's go into the Spirit.
In general.
Yep.
So the North Carolina Courage wins again. The team that is so much better than every other team. It's not fair. Won again. Was it 3-0, 4-1?
It was 4-1. Yeah, I mean it was pretty much. I think Crystal Dunn scored. Jessica McDonald scored. I mean basically it was like every single player that they pay for that's better than everybody else just absolutely wrecked Chicago Red Stars, and they were still a pretty good team.
They were very good, and that was Sam Kerr's swan song within NWSL.
Yep.
She's going to Europe now, potentially going to Chelsea. Fingers crossed that's where she ends up. They need some more goal scoring, but she's also potentially going to a couple of different places, so other big names in the space. The NWSL tried to quickly change their rules so that they could keep her by changing what the maximum amount of guaranteed salary that they could offer a player was. And they said at the time, basically, like, this won't be the reason that she leaves. If she leaves, she leaves, but we're going to fix this. NWSL's had a lot of change here, very, very, in a very short amount of time. It appears that Sacramento is going to have a team next year.
Mm-hmm. Louisville's already been announced as a team. Louisville's already been announced that they're going to have a team, I think, next season? 2021. Okay, so it'll be season after next when they finish the stadium. Got it. All
yep,
right.
And I believe there's another team in talks for 2022.
Yeah.
So that's great. I mean, nothing makes your team look more Mickey Mouse than not having 10 teams in it. Like that. That's XFL stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they're expanding beyond. I'm going to just dunk on XFL all the time, by the way.
Yeah, do it.
I'm just going to. I don't care. There's a multiple XFL accounts that follow the show on Twitter, but
yeah, I found that weird. That was happening.
The Spirit also have concluded that they're going to play 4 games next year at Audi Field, and 7 in 2021. 7's a lot.
Yeah.
That's kind of exciting if you're a local here and it can get to games at Audi Field better. It appears that there is no conversation about Segra, which is good.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they will get office space. They will get sort of other things that maybe training facility, but they're not going to play games at Segra, which is good. Like we talked about, turf, middle of not middle of nowhere, but not conveniently located for anyone except for the people who live there already. 7's a big move.
Yeah,
like that's a throw in the cards on the table, full commitment to DC. And I'm curious, and in 2 seasons at the end of it, what we're talking about, if these 2 games a year, drawing almost full house, what the real numbers look like over the aggregate when you spread them out over a lot more games and more time.
Yeah, and people can pick and choose, and not everybody's just gonna make time to go to those 1 or 2 games because it's kind of a unique thing. I will say I'm very happy, I guess, that they're still doing, I guess, 4 games at Audi and then the rest of their season, because there's also something to be said. If you're playing 4 games at Segra, 4 games at Audi, 4 games at I think that was the idea. They were gonna literally like just have 4 games at Audi. They were gonna split it, kind of just like literally down like in thirds almost, when they could. Um, I guess the question then becomes, you're doing that, and then what exactly is the Spirit's home venue? What is it? Is it Segra Field? Is it Audi Field? Is it the Maryland Soccerplex? So I am more in tune of an idea of, because you can't even really build a fortress if you're just splitting it 3 ways. You can't even build, an identity, fans, people to come out. You can't build a stadium, and for the players, that would be, not only are some of them not making, other than Rose Lavelle and Mallory Pugh, none of those players are making all that much money. They're making probably maybe a little bit more. Some of them are making maybe a little more of what the XFL players are going to make, and some of them are probably making a lot less than that, and having to live in supporter housing and things like that. It's a shame. NWCL should absolutely pay them more. I'm hoping that changes very, very quickly. But I mean, that is the nature of what it is. And then to be stringing yourself between 3 different fields, between the Maryland Soccerplex, Segra Field, I would imagine that would get really draining, and I would worry about that impacting the Spirit season. So I'm glad that I'm glad they're increasing the number of games at Audi Field. I think this is definitely like, okay, let's do 4. If we're drawing 20,000 every single one of those games, we're drawing a bunch of people out to watch those games. I'll be curious if they sell like a 4-pack for those games. I think that sounds smart to me.
They probably will.
Yeah, there's
I'll
some,
buy that.
yeah, like some sort of some sort of plan where you can literally just buy a ticket to those games. I'm definitely gonna try to get out to a game at Audi Field next season, especially now they're 4 and they're gonna have it at the beginning of the year, and I can actually plan a little bit. It's not something I have to figure out how am I going to get to the game. I have a month, the plans, calendar fills up and, oh, sorry, can't make it. So,
Bought tickets twice and did not attend. So basically, I just made nice donations to the Washington Spirit, in kind cash donations to the Washington Spirit last year.
yeah. So, I hope to get out there next season. But I think that's good. That's good. Do we want to talk? They had some players let go, and
Yeah, I'll go through that real quick.
yeah.
So as of today, they released the roster updates. Players, it's 9 players that have been put on the reentry wire. Some of them will come back,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of them. Some of them are already signed. The thing that I'm learning about as an NWSL neophyte is that how many of these players, similar to the WNBA, have other teams they play for just in the off season, just due to the vagaries of our schedule. Elise Kellen Knight is back in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chloe Lagarzo might also be. I'm not sure, but anyway, other players that have been released to the reentry wire, at least Megan Crossan, Mackenzie Berryhill, Amy Harrison, the aforementioned Elise Kellen Knight, Tiffany McCarty, Chloe Lagarzo, Callie Furkardson, Ariel Ship, and Shay Yanez. Shay was the backup goalie, played like 45 minutes for the year because the goalie in front of her happened to win goalie of the year, I believe.
Yeah.
And team of first 11. Oh, we can talk about that too.
But yeah, we can talk about that too. The mess that
she was first 11 for the league. And Audrey Bledsoe also got a call into the national team camp. So really great year for her. I don't think she could have had a better year. Andy Sullivan got a new contract offer. I don't know if she'll take it. I don't know how often players in this league get offered improved deals and don't take them, because I feel like there's probably a lot of control for the league and where people end up, and also what kind of salaries they can get. So hopefully she stays. I thought she had a really good year, particularly the first half of the year. But yeah, this could be based on how things go, based on if Sacramento comes in the league and there's another expansion draft. It could be a team that looks a lot different. I think it does need to look a little different. I think that this team is still pretty far behind the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, and which is a problem when you only the top 4 only make the playoffs. So you can't MLS it and just sort of be middle of the road and have like a good couple weeks and then float in. You got to really go end to end and really collect your points. So I think this is going to be a good offseason. This is exciting for them. They've got, they know that they're going to be in Audi Field a little bit more. Hopefully, the owner has talked extensively about really committing financially to this team and spending the money that needs to be spent for them to compete. I hope he does. I think just like with DC United, we want these teams to attract the best players possible and to be competing in a serious way for playoffs and for their championship.
And I think NWSL as a whole is facing a lot more competition than they have. You've got England, you've got Australia, you've got all these leagues that are propping up and are actually able to attract players. You lose Sam Kerr, who was an incredibly talented and fun player to watch when you watched her in the NWSL. People came out to watch her play. She's off to England to play in for. She's looking like she has a choice between PSG, Real Madrid, and that's what you get, particularly too when you have these very, very successful European clubs that have cash to burn and money to spend, and I don't think there's any financial fair play regulations they have to really worry about, and they don't. It doesn't matter to them what the bottom line looks like for these teams. They don't have any sort of salary cap or restrictions on spending. So the NWSL needs to adapt, because otherwise this league is going to lose a lot of those players. You're just going to have, a lot of the U.S. national team players, but the players who, the Martas, the Sam Kerrs, the
Players who make the league,
yeah,
like the international stars from the other, they are what makes us a competitive league, makes us the best league in the world. And if they can leave and they can go make money elsewhere, and there's competition also for just competitiveness, that these other leagues are actually, putting more than one or two competitive teams out there. You got to figure out money talks.
There's an incredible investment going on right now around the world for these clubs. And U.S. soccer, there's a lot of controversy regarding U.S. soccer and how they're sort of handling NWSL, and and if they don't adapt, they will lose it. And I don't know how long you can, I guess if the league were to collapse, a lot of the U.S. players would probably just go to Europe, and maybe that would be okay, I guess. But in a large sense, you'd be losing, the ability to grow something in the ground up and really make sure your next generation is good. Also, their a lot of their youth teams, the youth women's national teams, have not been doing well in tournaments. We can talk about the U.S. Men U17 bombing out of the U17 World Cup. I don't think Griffin Yao really had the best showing. I don't know if the offers are going to be rolling in for DC. But I know for a fact that, the U.S. women used to dominate every single women's, youth tournament World Cup. And now they are actually struggling. I think they just hired a coach. And a lot of the people who, people like Travis Clark and a lot of the others who sort of watch that side of the game and compare about it say this team is probably going to go 3-and-out in the next Youth World Cup because, this isn't the right move. So U.S. soccer has a tremendous advantage with the amount of talent that plays here, the amount of players that play here. They still have one of the largest pools of players really in any nation in the world, but they can just as easily fall behind. And we could be looking. Other nations are starting to catch up, and they're starting to invest, and they're starting to put more of an investment. U.S. soccer has been criticized for the amount of investment, but it's still a lot more than a lot of other nations are doing. Now a lot of other nations are waking up and seeing what the U.S. women have been able to do and the benefit they've been able to bring to the game in their country, and they're saying, well, we can do that. We already know how to coach, soccer players better than the way the U.S. does it currently, and we can do that. And then once those actual investments roll in, guarantee you U.S. soccer is going to start to look, unless they make the changes necessary, are going to start to look a lot worse. I'm not saying it's going to happen next World Cup. I'm not even going to say it's going to happen maybe in the next couple World Cups. But, 10 years down the line, why not? Why not?
So the NWSL Best 11 had an interesting player in it, one that we love, but one that should not have been in it. Rose Lavelle, a player you may know if you have been alive the last year, or if you're a Washington Spirit fan at all. I'm trying to look up right now how many games she played.
It wasn't a lot. The World Cup
wasn't many.
World Cup and injuries just kind of sucked, and it's not good. It certainly doesn't help. It doesn't help your league when you look. I mean, even we have criticisms. We have criticisms of MLS's Best 11 Bill Hamid should have been the goalkeeper of the year. I nothing against the Minnesota goalkeeper. I'm sure he had a great season. Bill Hamid had the better season, in my opinion. And I know I'm biased. This is a DC United podcast, but we can. There's arguments to be made for every one of those players to be on the best 11. The problem with the NWSL best 11 is Roosevelt had a great World Cup, but this NWSL is about the NWSL season, not the World Cup. She had 6 appearances in 2019, and she only had 1 goal that I can see, and that's
Great goal.
Yeah, great goal.
I believe it was a winner.
Yeah, but I don't think any other league in the world with a player who has 6 appearances and 1 goal will be making the best 11 in your league. So that's frustrating. I don't know. Do they have a breakdown of like the vote or anything like that, or media voting?
I imagine it was a secret ballot pulled out of a large magician's hat.
Well, sometimes they show like the percentages, like club. I know MLS does that, but
I feel like they probably didn't. But yeah. I'm not looking at it. But I will bet you a nickel that did not happen. You're looking for it now.
Yeah,
it's possible. So yeah, I mean, hopefully she plays a lot more. She's had injury problems since she's come to Spirit. So the previous year, she had similarly minimal stats here. But I think now she played 11 games last in 2018, 424 minutes played. So only 5 starts out of those 11. So she really needs to put. I mean, she doesn't need to. She has, that's the thing that's kind of interesting about this, about NWSL versus MLS. Like, you make your bones on the women's side in the national team, and what happens in the league is just nice to have. From her perspective, she won a World Cup. She was the star of the World Cup. Her profile has risen. Her marketability has risen. And whatever happens in NWSL was good. And if she can win some there, that'd be great. But that's just not where everything is about. The incentives align for how much you care about it, and it's just not there yet at the moment. It doesn't come close to the national team.
No.
So hopefully she puts in a full season, gets a full healthy year, except for the Olympics.
The Olympics, yeah.
So never mind.
Yeah. Hopefully NWSL. I really hope they take the Olympic break, the full break through. I mean, if you have to play one games, a game right up at it, and then a game, right after it, okay. But like none of this like playing a whole season almost. The U.S. women's national team is probably going to the knockout stage, probably going pretty far in the tournament. Things can change, but you have the ability. You don't have a lot of teams in your league. You don't have like this need with MLS where they have to schedule a bunch of matches. So they pretty much, the way their schedule was set up, they pretty much had to do it. Otherwise, you have 5 Wednesday games. I feel like they can figure out a way to give a full break through the Olympics, and then we're coming back, and we're gonna and just give your owners and take this league seriously, because otherwise it's not gonna grow. It's still incredibly frustrating to watch a game that the Spirit needed to win to even have a chance at making the playoffs, and Rose Lavelle's on the bench and the game ends 0-0. And you're doing a disservice to the people that watch that are gonna watch the Olympics in Tokyo, buy a ticket and say, oh, great, we're going to see Crystal Dunn, we're going to see, Rose Lavelle, Mallory Pugh, this is going to be great. They show up and, not a disservice to the women who are playing in those games, but those are your big ticket draws. If you buy a ticket to Liverpool versus Arsenal, you're going to see Mo Salah, you're going to see, you pay a lot of money for a ticket, you take your family, and the players aren't going to be there, then it kind of and they're healthy too. If they're injured, there's nothing you can do about that. But if they're healthy and they can play, but U.S. Soccer's the one saying no, sorry, you gotta kind of wonder, and you gotta kind of wonder what owner would want to get involved in this league that does those types of things. That's my 2 cents on it. I've talked about it before. I won't go much further than that, but
yeah. So. I think we've about covered all of the things we wanted to cover.
Yeah.
I think that we're still trying to figure out what we want to do in the offseason. When MLS finally finishes up, there will be more player moves. So we'll finally be able to put a real bow on that. We know for sure that Jalen Robinson's not coming back. We know for sure that Leo Hara's not coming back. Marquinhos Pedroso's not coming back. who else was there? I'm trying to remember if there's any other players that for sure got let loose all the way. There are a lot of players that are questionable. Bill Hamid, they wanted to get the deal done. It's not done yet, so TBD
Yeah,
there.
that's gonna be the interesting one. I think that's gonna be the more interesting move than Leo Harda or Lucas Rodriguez, because Lucas Rodriguez is loaned, so
Right.
they want DC to take him, so they're gonna work out a deal. Now it could be just like Emil Assad. They could be like, oh, we want you to pay this, and DC says, well, we can do that, but we have to do it over two transfer windows, and they'd be like, what? We don't understand that. Never mind. Forget it. Hopefully they're a little more reasonable and say, well, we have salary considerations and cap considerations. It could be that the CBA completely changes that. They're like, sorry, no, transfer fees don't count anymore towards the cap. Spend as much as you want on that. But the Bill Hamid one's going to be interesting because DC isn't, you don't want to pay a whole lot you want him back. You don't want to pay a whole lot to bring him back because you let him go on a free. So essentially you're buying back a player you had in your wheelhouse. I don't think his Danish team. I'm not even going to attempt to try to pronounce that name. Midtjylland.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Anyway, who cares? But maybe they're not going to necessarily want. They don't want Bill Hamid back. I'm sure they have. I haven't been watching them this season, but I'm willing to bet that whatever keepers they have in there are probably more than they've been going along just fine with the keepers that they have.
You haven't been watching them? You have not been
I have not been keeping up with the Danish league. Sorry. I know they just wrapped up. I think there was a Danish game on, or maybe it was Sweden. I can't remember. It was one of the teams like they were wrapping up their season or something like that, and there was a game on ESPN Plus. I was working from home, and I'm like, okay, sure, I'll put this on.
Soccer's on. I'll watch it.
Yeah, soccer's on. I am if nothing but an addict when it comes to this sport. Anyway, but yeah, so it's going to be curious to see whether DC can get a deal done. They still don't want to get taken to the ringer. I think that's why you're seeing, keeper names sort of crop up that they might be looking at, sort of big time names. When you're trying to get a big star, to be in your movie, but he wants too much money, you start holding castings and trying to bring in other people to try to get him to lower his salary. That certainly looks like that's what DC's trying to do here. Knowing fully well if they can't get Bill, they're going to have to figure out something else and bring in certainly a big goalkeeper, because let's face it, this team is not rebuilding. They're not doing a hard rebuild. They are trying to, I guess, do a soft rebuild and hope it works out. But this team is looking like the players they brought in. This is not a team that's trying to just start over from scratch and rebuild. So that's going to be the story. It's going to be a long offseason, man. I named this podcast the Abyss of the Offseason. This is going to be a long and lengthy offseason. And then we haven't even gotten like there's no talk about the CBA negotiations, which are going to, if you've been an MLS fan around a CBA negotiation, it is absolutely the most like dry and just like weird story that you have to follow as you're watching.
My shit, Ted. I'm excited about it. We're gonna have good podcasts about this stuff.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm ready.
Oh yeah, we're gonna bring in lawyers and attorneys and talk about rights. I remember they had like there was the moment when they weren't sure whether they were gonna sign the CBA negotiation. Went to the 11th hour and literally the owners were just like, "Here's the deal, take it or leave it." They had a meeting and they're like, "All right, we'll sign it." And then like the strike was over. But there were images. I think there was like Graham Zusi being like, people were like taking video of them like in the conference room as they were like walking in. Strange times. I don't know if we'll get that level of strange, but
yeah, I think that they are. I've not heard a lot of conversation about being ready to strike. I've not heard about big strike funds. All I've heard about is some of the bigger players speaking up a little bit more about a couple issues, small issues.
Maybe we're not reading the same things. I've heard a lot of talk about they have funds put together. Some of the more the players making the multi-million-dollar salaries are now putting in a little bit more money to help keep afloat the other players. The thing I think you have to think about right now is that the minimum salary in MLS is actually at a point. It's gone up, which it absolutely should, but I think it's now finally sort of at a point where players now have nest eggs, maybe a little bit of a rainy day fund, and the ownership. And when you've got players making $5 million, to $1.2 million, several $100,000 because of based on the salary cap and TAM and all this other money in there, the players' ownership gets together and say, hey, can you chip in, $50,000 to cover the yearly salary of a player? Sure, I'll do that. I'll chip that in. So, I think they've actually, this is going to be, I think, a little bit more drawn out. I think they're going to go a little harder. And if we don't see, if we see a delayed start to the season, I will not be surprised at all. I don't think the players are buying anymore the idea that the league is, not making money. And have ownership that if this team goes away, they are literally losing money because they will not have a team. It wasn't like before where you have 20 NFL owners who are like, I could care, I want MLS, I want to own a soccer team, but if it goes away, I'm not crying. I got my football team, I've got my, all those things. So now you've got a little more diversified ownership. So I think this is going to be a long, drawn-out fight. I think everybody's waiting until the season ends, and then we're going to see a big fight to the finish for the next CBA negotiation. And I'll be curious to see what comes out of it.
Go Players.
What's that?
I said go Players.
Go Players. Absolutely. Do we want to talk Pulisic? Do we want to? No.
You can. You have stronger feelings about this.
I have strong feelings about this. Well, I said,
I'm glad he's scoring for Chelsea. That's all I care about.
I know you're glad he's scoring for Chelsea, and I'm glad to see other Americans doing well. I think Josh Sargent's had a goal. We got Serginho Dest, which was a nice little pickup.
Big surprise.
What's that?
That's a big surprise.
Yeah, but it was a big surprise. I fully was not expecting him to do that, especially with how things are going. But I think it just shows that the success we're seeing by the U.S. players in Europe shows that the players are not the issue. And there was a lot of talk, I think, when Canada beat the U.S., was like, oh, you guys think your players are better than they actually are. And I think this shows, no, these players are good. It's the coaching that needs to back. That's all I'm going to say on that. I think Berhalter should be out. I think they should clean complete house right now. So, yeah. I guess with that, we'll wrap up the show. I did not get any music. John didn't send me any music, so
why don't you tap dance for 5 seconds?
No, I think we'll just
talk about where they can find us on the internet.
Okay, fair enough. You can find us twitter.com/RFK Refugees. You can go to facebook.com, search the RFK Refugees podcast. You can also go to patreon.com/the RFK Refugees. Thank you all so much for listening. You guys are awesome, and we will catch you all next week. Vamos.
That was not enough tap dancing. Vamos, guys.